So here we have a guest on Vladimir Solovoyev's program, which is always a fun propaganda clown show. He takes a different angle on nuclear weapons with a new proposal on how they should be deployed to the United States. So let's take a look.
Президент еще, обращая внимание, сказал интересную вещь. Он сказал, что подписал указ о приятии на вооружение новых образцов. Вполне возможно, что и речь идет, я предполагаю, о Сармате. Сармат — это особое оружие. Это оружие, которое способно, во-первых, помимо доставки большого количества ядерных боеприпасов до цели, большой мощности, она еще способна при использовании моноблочной боевой части наносить удары через Южный полюс. Глобальная ракета. Всеракурсную систему ПРО создать невозможно, а это означает, что Соединенные Штаты Америки...
So two things here. He talks about this missile being able to go around the South Pole using only small block warheads. So if they use the larger warheads, they're bigger ones on the Sarmat missile, the fuel capacity isn't large enough to take them around the South Pole. So they'd have to use smaller warheads. Now it's relative. Those are still 500 kiloton warheads, so they would be very devastating. But you can't fire the larger warheads, which makes a difference when he talks about his next strategic bit of brilliance here on what the Russians should be striking. The second thing is it's not that it's impossible. The U.S. doesn't have a southward-facing missile defense system because previously Russia would have to go over the North Pole. There was never any missiles in Russia's arsenal that could traverse the South Pole and still hit the United States. It's not that we can't create it, it's just that we never had to. Now that that's a potential threat with the Sarmat missile, the Sarmat 2 that's come out, that they can go around the south, I'm pretty sure the U.S. is going to adjust its radar to be able to have southward-facing radars, enhance them, etc., and it'll probably cause more balloons to show up on radar too. Let's keep going.
Это первый момент. А второй момент состоит в том, что Сармат создает угрозу самому страшному объекту на территории США — Йеллоустонскому вулкану.
So he goes on to talk about how Putin might be planning on developing weaponry to strike Yellowstone. Putin's not. That's not a thing at all. The Kremlin came out and said that they are not going to enhance its nuclear stance or anything, even despite leaving the start tree. So let me put some truth on this Yellowstone supervolcano explosion theory that this genius in the middle here has, because they're all a bunch of fucking geniuses, aren't they? He talks about small block missiles. In order for this to be a reality, they would have to use their big block missiles, which is their larger, heavy 800 kiloton missiles, and those would have to go around the North Pole. So immediately we would already detect them, and that would be a problem for Russia. But Yellowstone experiences a devastating event every, 50 to 100 years or so that is bigger than a nuclear weapon, and those are earthquakes. So Yellowstone experiences 15 to 2,500 earthquakes a year. Most of them are very small and you can't even feel them, but every once in a while there is a large earthquake. The last large earthquake was in 1959 when a 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck Yellowstone and the caldera, the supervolcano, didn't go up. A 7.3 earthquake equals 90,000 kilotons on the Kelly Kiloton Index for earthquakes. Yes, we have an index that measures earthquake strength in total kilotons of explosive power. Before I get into kind of the math behind Richter scale to nuclear yield, I need to tell you that the magnitude of the Richter scale is based on a base 10 logarithmic scale, meaning that it's not calculated in linear scale, 10, 20, 30, 40. It's non-linear, meaning it goes by 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000. That's how it scales up. It's a logarithmic scale, meaning that as the Richter scale grows, it's exponentially more powerful than the previous numbers. So when I said a 7.3 earthquake is equal to 90,000 kilotons, an 8.3 earthquake, which hit San Francisco in 1906, is equal to 2.8 million kilotons. For reference, the bomb we dropped on Nagasaki was 20 kilotons. So that 1959 earthquake that hit Yellowstone was a 7.3 magnitude. It was the largest ever recorded at Yellowstone. It was actually the largest earthquake ever recorded in the Intermountain West. And scientists are actually saying that these earthquakes that take place at Yellowstone are a safety relief valve. They relieve the pressure of the caldera. So when they happen, it's generally a good thing. Now, granted, people have died in earthquakes at Yellowstone, so it's unfortunate, but those are due to rock slides. Now, scientists have said that it would take at least an 8.0 magnitude earthquake to even be concerned about the caldera blowing up. They're skeptical that even an 8.0 earthquake would do so, but that's when they would start to worry. So let's geek out on some math here when it comes to the Richter scale to Kelly kiloton index. An 8.0 Richter scale magnitude earthquake on the Richter scale is as much energy as 1 million kilotons. The largest nuke the Russians have, the largest warhead, is 800 kilotons. They can deploy 10 of them on their Sarmat missile, but that Sarmat missile has to traverse the North America, the northern half of the globe, not the southern half as they talked about. As of today, Russia has 400 heavy warheads with each with a yield of 800 kilotons. That means they could put 40 missiles into the air, delivering those 400 warheads. 400 warheads at a yield of 800 kilotons equals 320,000 kilotons. 320,000 kilotons is a 7.6 on the Richter scale, and that assumes that they all perfectly go off at the same time, which they won't, because even a detonation difference in time of just a half a second spreads that detonation yield over that time. But not only that, the minute the first nuclear weapon went off, it would likely destroy any others that hadn't gone off by that time. It's not going to create a chain reaction of the nuclear weapons themselves. They'll just destroy the vehicles that are carrying the nuclear weapons before they could go off. And mind you, Russia's nuclear weapons are airburst. They're designed to destroy cities. They're not meant for ground penetration, and certainly not to the depths that an earthquake causes devastation at a place like Yellowstone. It would just be good at wrecking the ecology of Yellowstone, destroying trees, and probably making it so we couldn't visit it for, a couple hundred years. The other problem Russia would have here is in the strategic method of the way they deploy these nukes. There's only about 20,000 people in Yellowstone on a given day. So you want to waste your entire ICBM arsenal, your Continental Ballistic Missile arsenal, on 20,000 people. That's dumb, because the United States is going to retaliate against Moscow, St. Petersburg, and probably 20 population centers, killing roughly 30 million people instantly. Plus, you left our military infrastructure completely intact. Yours will not be. We will target yours, for sure. So you just wasted all your major capable nuclear arsenal on Yellowstone on the hope that it works. And scientists don't think it will work. Furthermore, these idiots didn't think of what actually would happen if Yellowstone would up. Let's say this does work. It would plunge the whole Earth into a mini ice age, which would disproportionately affect the already Arctic-oriented Russia the most. Outside of the U.S. dealing with the immediate fallout of the ash and whatnot, Russia would likely struggle, as well as Europe, with 5 to 10 degree global temperature drops. That's bad for Russia. But let's say for shits and giggles, we can figure out how many warheads it would take Russia to reach that 8.0 Richter scale, which, as I said before, may not even cause the caldera to go up. They would need about 1,250 warheads, and that would be carried on 125 missiles. Those missiles would not have to fail, not a single one en route. They would have to break through U.S. missile defenses, which can be expected to kill about 1/4 to 1/3 of the warheads re-entering, or the missiles on their way in boost phase. So really, they would need an insurance of about 1,500 warheads on 150 missiles. And they would all have to detonate simultaneously, which I've said before, they won't. Again, this is very dumb. I just don't understand why the Russians think this is something that is a possibility. I kind of understand what they're doing. They're trying to say, this is how we defeat the juggernaut that is the United States. We hit their Yellowstone caldera and blow up the whole country. That's not what's going to happen. If it were to work, it would cause a global catastrophe. And if it weren't going to work, it would cause a catastrophe over the part of the Intermountain West, the Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, that dealt with Yellowstone, which sucks because that's kind of my neck of the woods. But the rest of the United States, the U.S.'s submarine-launched ballistic missiles, it's full military apparatus, because there's not a single military base remotely close to Yellowstone that would be affected by a nuclear weapon strike on Yellowstone. Those will all be intact. This is not a good strategy. It's all for show, as with everything. So all you Americans that may hear this, there's nothing to worry about when it comes to Yellowstone, other than how crazy Beth is.
It is a painful lesson, and one you're about to learn.